Shelled by Mark Bosse. If you would like to purchase this novel, the purchase link will be in the description below. I've known Mark for most of my life, ever since childhood. It would mean a lot to me if you would consider purchasing the novel. Chapter 1. Grass waved gently in the breeze, its green hue reflecting onto the visor of a boy looking out his window. He sighed and watched as his view flickered and shifted to red, blue, yellow, and then back to green. He grew tired of cycling through his vision options and pressed a hand to the glass as he watched the swaying grass. He made a fist and pulled back, attempting to smash the glass window. But as he threw his fist forward, the suit he wore slowed his arm before impact. His clenched metal hand gently tapped the glass. He returned from the window as he heard the door to his room open. "Jula, did you try to break the window?" His mother sounded upset as he faced her. Yes, lying would have been stupid, for Jula had learned since a young age that his mother's grit had already alerted her to his actions. "Jula, please be more considerate. What happens if your actions notified Central Control? Your father has been working very hard to get promoted so that we could move deeper into the city. You could have jeopardized his record." Sheila's visor displayed exasperation at her son. He glazed back. The ripple of emotions rolled across his visor as it displayed the words frustration, annoyance, dismay. He bowed his head. "I'm sorry, Mom. I just know there is something wrong with this." He held out his suited hands and arms. "Come now. You had your diagnostic 3 months ago. You're fine. You're functioning normally." His mother's word caused frustration to reappear on his visor. "That's not what I meant. I mean, this isn't right." He held out his arms and swung it towards the window. The suit he wore slowed the motion of his action and simply tapped the glass again. His mother's visor rapidly fluctuated again through alarm, fear, disapproval, and warning. "Jula, son of Sten, do not do that again. How could you object to something that prevents you from making bad choices? You could hurt yourself, expose yourself to toxic fumes, or worse yet, radiation. How could you?" Sheila took her son by the shoulders and shook him. "Be sensible. What would your father say?" "That he has to learn to curb his willfulness and put it towards his duties." Both mother and son jumped when they heard the voice of Sten. They turned to see him at the doorway. Sheila released Jula and gripped Sten's hand. "Honey, you're home early." Her visor displayed alarm, concern, and confusion. "Yes, but do not be alarmed. I was, in fact, promoted today for my work in prevention and loss, so they gave me a celebratory evening." His wife took his other hand and held them both tightly. Surprise, joyful, happy, streaked across her visor. They stood with their hands clasped for several minutes, in their shared excitement, while Jula stood patiently and waited for them to finish with their moment. He felt it unsightly whenever he watched them clasp hands. He wished they were more restrained like other couples, but then again, he was one of the few who actually had parents and not guardians, so he would have to excuse some of their behavior. "As for you, Jula, study harder with those emotions. I have told them of your work in mathematics, and they have noticed you for a while. They wish that you were less impulsive, so that they could allow you to participate in calculation and prediction. It would be a great honor to work together at Central Control, much more honorable than to have you enlisted among the tacticians. You have enough brains to be a mender, since you have done so well in electronics and chemistry. But honestly, you could do so much more with your skills." Jula could hear the encouragement of the government seeping through his father's speech. "Such as build reliable, stable individuals for the future," Jula finished his father's sentence. But his visor displayed sarcastic disrespect, apathy. Sten shook his head. "I am disappointed you feel that way. I had hoped you would learn to see the honor in willful good service." "They will have my service, willful or not. What more do they need?" Jula's disgust was displayed across his visor. Central Control is in need of no more. We are privileged to work with them. The tension of the moment was interrupted by a fourth voice. Masterful presentation of Central Control tagline. Jula looked past his father to see Uncle Tamer. Sten stiffened, and his visor rapidly cycled through surprise, anger, disgust, dismay, annoyance. When Sten turned to face his brother, he spoke carefully. Though you have grown to distrust the government due to your reckless research, it does not mean that we all must suffer for your views. Sten stepped before Tamer and stood as a body shield between Tamer and the family of Sten. Relax, brother. I know your emotions about me and my work, about me and my views. I respect your honesty, forced or otherwise. Be it so, I do not have to be like you in such ways. The vision screen of Tamer remained suspiciously inactive. No words scrolled across as he continued to speak. I am actually here to speak with young Jula, son of Sten. The words came out naturally, but with an artificial formality. Jula suddenly noticed a new message appear in the corner of his vision screen. Messages usually waited patiently for him to activate them at his convenience, but this message blinked, and flashed impatiently for him to activate it. I know that you, Sten, would never think outside the confines of the visions of Central Control, but Jula carries the honor and tradition of our roots more deeply and passionately than you have ever displayed. You may be fully satisfied with your life of sedated ambition and political fulfillment, but he yearns to know the raw truth and feel the raw substance of life. Jula felt excitement and determination filled him. He realized too late that it must have spilled across his visor. His mother gasped and stood between him and his uncle. You will not take this boy from us. We will not let him follow your foolish, prideful desires. Only suffering and extinction can be found on your path. As she finished, Jula's father continued, This son is ours and will not be dragged into the pain and suffering of your false ideology and philosophy. I will not stand by and see 300 years of faith and commitment destroyed. The government ended war, stopped violence, and diverted natural extinction. Through determination and unification, they have saved humanity. Central Control may seem repugnant to a twisted pervert like yourself who desires suffering and pain, but I will not have it defaced before my son. The couple stood in alliance against Tamer. That may be your sentiments, but it does not necessarily reflect the wishes of Jula. I have seen the world that Central Control keeps hidden and locked. I have seen the glory of light and brilliance of the sun. I have seen the fields of grass and the clouds that float through the skies. Sten and Sheila's screens were filled with horror, shock, surprise, grief, and fear. Jula stood in amazement and excitement. I have studied the world, and you talk of narrow vision and painful extinction. I have read and written and spoken of freedom and independence. Shrill alarms suddenly sounded in the room as the house reacted to the last two words. Jula suddenly lost his vision and his grid dropped offline. He could hear his mother screaming and his father shouting, "Traitor!" and sudden yet deafening metal-on-metal collisions. His hearing dropped offline as well and plunged him into sensory deprivation as he stood in fear and shock. Tamer ignored the sudden alarm and shook his head sadly as he looked down at his disabled brother. Sten had tried to apprehend him for his irreverent speech, and no doubt the unconscious brother would receive a bonus for his loyal efforts and bravery when he awoke. Sheila went into hysterics before simply fainting on the floor. Tamer walked calmly over to Jula and stepped behind him. The uncle examined the suit of gray plating that covered the boy's body. He scanned the surface to find a small niche for the suit's central jack. He placed a small microchip into the slot and covered it with a false jack port. He stepped back and gave the boy a severe wallop to the back of the head. The blow sent the boy hurtling across the floor and into the wall. The blow was calculated to disable his consciousness and put the suit into temporary deactivation. Tammer sighed as he watched the still form of his nephew rest against the wall. "No pain is so great as ours to bear," he muttered to himself, as he heard the door to the house crash inwards as Agent flooded into the house. He stood patiently as they spilled into the room. "Do you have an objection to using decoder cards for the doors, or do you just get a kick out of kicking them in?" Tammer waited for them to organize themselves for his capture, and they advanced as a single unit. "Tammer, Unit 56102. You are hereby detained and required to turn yourself over to Central Control for deactivation and recycling." Despite the mental preparation he had made for this moment, he still shivered at the word deactivation. "I am at the service of Central Control," he mockingly replied, as he charged through the group. He made it through 10 agents before he was caught and subdued. He ceased to struggle once they had him firmly grasped by each limb. They roughly lifted him off the ground and carried him bodily from the room. 3 menders were left with an agent to oversee the recovery of the Sten family. This is the end of Chapter 1 of Shelled by Mark Bosse. If you would like to continue reading or actually get the end of the story, because I doubt I'll make another one of these, the purchase link will be in the description below. I hope you have a good day or night or whatever it is. And always remember, whatever it was, it's probably not important. So long.